This is Natural Powerlifting Radio. Deadlifts, chicken nuggets, video games. This is Check My Total, a powerlifting podcast with Timothy Payne and Andrew Hinson.
Welcome everybody to another episode. This is part 2 of our part 3 series with Kenneth Moody. Part 1 was a question and answer session about the bench press, and today we're going to talk about the squat. So Kenneth, what kind of questions you got for us today?
Well, Andrew and I kind of over the weekend worked a lot on my squat, bench, and deadlift form, and it was really helpful, but really just like some generic questions. I've heard that squatting, I've heard some people say this, and they weren't necessarily reliable in the sense that they were doctors or something, but I've heard that squatting really heavy weight, of course, proportional to your body weight and your strength, can put like serious strain on your back, like the disc, over time, even like if you keep like good form. Have you heard anything about that?
I mean, I guess common sense would tell you that over a period of time that you're probably compressing your back. But it's over such a long period of time, but I don't think it's going to hurt you, if that makes sense. It's kind of like you just getting old in general. Like my dad, was like 6'5", and now he's like 6'3".
Whoa.
But I don't think that has to do with him lifting weights. But I think that combined with just you getting older in general, it probably speeds up the process a little bit. But personally, I don't think it's something to stress over.
Yeah, I wouldn't stress much over it. I mean, it's kind of like just a long haul thing, like, just repetitive movement and just repetitive use of your back over the years. I mean, it's like people that work construction; they get beat up when they get old, or like people that lay floor, like do carpentry, they get jacked up when they get older. And I think it's one of those. I mean, I'm sure, like, I just don't know anyone that has had, like, if they've been squatting for a long time, that have, with good form, and they go heavy and they compete a lot. I don't really know anyone that's really had really compressed disc like that.
Really?
Yeah, I just haven't really seen that much. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure it's happened before, but I mean, we know tons of people that have been competing, and a lot of people that are stronger than us and lifting a lot heavier weights, and they haven't had any disc problems yet.
No. Usually the people that have back problems is when they get injured. So injury is different than what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right.
If
you get injured, then yeah, that's a different thing. The longer you compete, and the longer you lift, and the longer you squat, and the harder you push it, your chance of injury shoots up. So,
Right.
Like, we know a guy that popped one of his disc out because he was doing box squats, which I don't know if you know what these are, but it's where you have the bar on your back and you go down and you sit on the box and then come back up.
Yeah.
Well, he had too much weight on his back, and he was actually doing this in the high school weight room, trying to, show off to his friends. Well, he came down way too quick and slammed his bottom on that box. Well, anyways, popped his disc out.
RIP!
Yeah. But besides that, I don't know anybody that has, disc problems.
Yeah. I have not seen or heard much of people with really good form and that have stayed healthy having disc problems. I just haven't seen it.
What about when you're getting in position, right? The form of the squat, just in general, like, what's the proper leg length apart? Do you kind of cave your legs when you go down, kind of forward, or maybe a little diagonally out, pointed out? Would you mind speaking on that?
Yeah, so I mean, when you came over this weekend, I mean, really, your squat form was actually pretty decent. It was mainly just where the bar was. But one thing to work on is, as a base starting position, I would say shoulder width, maybe slightly wider than shoulder width apart, just for the start. And then, you brought up to me, it's like when you squeeze your glutes together, it kind of straightens out your spine more before you start the lift. Well,
Right.
another thing that kind of gets your glute tighter is, point those toes out just a tad. And then basically wherever your toes are is where your knees are going to travel. So,
Right.
If your toes are slightly pointed out, then your knees are going to travel outward. But, I mean, they'll be in a straight, like, your knee will travel forward, like, kind of, like, towards your toe. And so kind of determining where your toes are pointed is where your knees are going to go.
Right.
But to answer your question about how far apart your feet need to be, like the width of your feet, one of the things that we'll ask people to do that are beginning with us is to jump. So whatever position that you get in to jump, like if you're going to jump on top of a box, but whatever athletic position you get in to perform that jump is probably where you're going to feel most powerful in your squat as far as the width of your feet go. Now, as you get into powerlifting and start, strengthening up your hips and your core and all that kind of mess, you can afford to have a wider stance. And when I say wider stance, I mean wider than shoulder width.
Right.
That's after you've been in the game in a while and have built up, like I said, strength.
Yeah, and then you can get too scientific with it and be like what's kind of socket you have in your femur, and then like how does it lodge into whatever. And I don't know anatomy too well as far as that goes, but there's different ways the pelvis is shaped, and there's different ways your socket lines up with that. And that, generally speaking, it just means some people squat better, a little narrow, and then some people squat better or wider, just depending on how it kind of feels comfortable to you.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as your knees, like we were talking about, you want them to track over your midfoot. Like you never want your knees to go over your toes if you're doing a powerlifting squat, because if your knees go over your toes, then you're putting all the pressure in your quads, and it becomes more like a bodybuilding squat than it does a powerlifting squat. But if your knees track over your midfoot to your heel, then that generally means that you're sitting back, and that puts, more hips into the lift, and it'll allow you also to get deeper with your squat.
Yeah, and then, depending on what you're working, like, it also, when your knee shoots way forward past your toes, then you get into this whole thing of, like, you're just going to, like, eventually fall forward because the weight's going to get way over out of your midfoot, and it's going to just start going. If the bar starts going past your toes, that's probably not a very good thing. You're going to fall forward. Right. No, you have a lot more knee travel than me or Timmy, because you're just...
It's got long legs.
Your legs are long. You have very long legs. So, like, you'll have a lot more knee travel than we will. So, I mean, like, my knees are very obviously behind my toes. But your knees, they're probably going to be right at your toes. Probably maybe a little bit behind it, but it won't be as behind as, like, someone like me.
And usually when people talk about having knee trouble or don't squat because you'll mess your knees up, that's the reason why their knees are way out in front of their toes.
Mm.
But when you were squatting in the gym, it really was not bad. Like, your knees were not over your toes. So as far as that goes, you were doing pretty solid.
All right.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, what about bar positioning? When I was with Andrew Saturday, we kind of looked at, in a low bar position, but what's the benefits and the cons of each of those?
We talked about how, one of the pros of a lower bar position is, generally it gets the bar closer to your hips and it enables you to kind of use more of your glutes and hamstrings and your back during the lift. So generally speaking, you should be able to lift more that way because you're using more muscle groups. So that's one of the pros. I mean, one of the cons is, jacks your... I mean, it's not the most comfortable position to be in all the time.
Yeah.
And having a low bar, you got more surface area on the bar itself, which makes you feel more powerful, and it gives the bar more support.
Yeah, and I don't feel as much like compression when I do a low bar squat.
Yeah, that too. Talking about your disc.
Yeah, I don't feel as much compression just because there is more surface area on the bar. I got a little bit more forward lean. I'm not as vertical as I am with a high bar. And then I would say one of the cons of a low bar squat, in my opinion, is you can get really strong glutes and hips and hamstrings and a strong back, but this happened to me. My quads were very lacking in the squat.
Ooh.
Like I was very good everywhere else, but like my actual quads were weak. And so I started doing lots of front squats and lots of higher bar squats to hit the quads more, just to kind of bring up a weakness. And then my whole squat shot up. And I started doing less good mornings. Because when I would squat, I would get down to the bottom and like I would good morning the weight up like almost every time.
Andrew's chest would be on his knees in the hole.
Yep.
It was pretty rough. I ain't gonna lie.
It was pretty rough. So yeah. And when I got my quads stronger, did more front squats and high bar squats, and just worked on my quads more, I was able to be more upright.
Right, coming up with weight.
Yeah, because like the thing is, like you can have like a strong core and stuff, but like if you can't get out of the hole with just your quads and your hips, then like you almost have to good morning it.
Yeah. Well, what if you are down in the hole and let's say the weight just, it's just gotten too heavy. You thought you had a comfortable set, maybe you're trying to hit a PR. You didn't have a spot or something, whatever, but you just get down there and you're just like, crap, I can't get up.
Yep, that's when I just set it on those pins. I just lower it on the safety pins, and then I just kind of let go and like penguin waddle myself out. That's basically what I do.
Best case scenario, you got friends there that can help you spot,
But
people.
Generally, that was never the case. And like, even at Freed, like when I would squat in like the 500s, I would just generally have pins.
Yeah.
And lay it on the pins. I was never a huge fan of squatting without safety pins, but sometimes I would. Especially at Freed when they only had that one squat rack.
Oh.
And I was forced to go to the CrossFit cage thing that didn't have anything. So yeah, that was about the only time I would do it. But yeah, I would recommend finding a waterfall rack or some type of power rack that you can set pins on, so that if you do have to bail, you can just slowly lower the weight onto the pins and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, if you can't get up, you can't get up. Call life alert.
Help, I've fallen and I can't get up.
Yeah, some people that lift in these CrossFit gyms and stuff where they have bumper plates, they'll just dump it and throw it off their back because, with the bumper plates, they're not going to hurt the floor or anything.
Right.
But I still don't feel too safe doing that.
What if it bounces and hits you?
Yeah, there's all kinds of crap that could happen.
Or hit your back on the way down, your low back or something.
Yeah, so I'm with Andrew. Just keep on squatting so you hit them pins.
Did y'all speak the high bar placement or just low?
Oh yeah, so high bar. So one of the pros of high bar is, generally speaking, you don't have to use as much as your back. So if you've had a heavy training week of your conventional deadlifts or whatever, and your back's a little fatigued, then high bar is a great thing to do because it won't hit your back as much, and generally you're more vertical, straight up and down, as far as your starting position goes. So helps to kind of helps work your core some more, and then I would also say it does help build the quads more, since you take your back and some of your like hamstrings out of the lift, so you're kind of left with the quads, and your glutes and hips help still, but it puts more strain on the quads. So I think you should train both in most cases.
Yep, I agree with all of that.
I'm trying to think. I mean, the pros kind of tell the cons. The cons are it is more quad dominant. It is, you don't have as many muscle groups working with you, so most people are not able to move the same amount of weight. But not everyone. And then there's a hybrid. Some people don't really care for the low bar, the traditional low bar. Some people don't really care for the traditional high bar, and they kind of do an in between. And it comes down to what bar position is most comfortable to you and your body structure and the way you squat, wide, narrow, toes out, toes pointed forward. But that takes a long time to get used to and figure out. So sticking with the two styles and figuring out from there.
Yeah. But straight up, if you plan on doing a powerlifting competition, you need a squat low bar, because you're not going to squat as much as you can high bar as you can low bar. So if you're going to do high bar, it needs to be worked into your training, but don't make that your main bar position if you plan on doing a competition.
Right.
And if you just plan on gaining muscle and lifting the lift, then I would say definitely do both. 1 week low, 1 week high, or 2 weeks high, 2 weeks low. So there's some variation of that, because you don't want to completely disregard the benefits of a low bar or completely disregard the benefits of a high bar. You should definitely do both.
Yep.
Well, what about when you're going down on the squat? How far do you go? I know some people go a little bit lower than, or go way lower than 90 degrees. Some go about 90 degrees. Some go just a little bit under. What do y'all think about that?
I think it kind of depends on your goals as a power lifter, and if you're going to compete, the rules are you have to go below 90 degrees.
You have to break parallel.
So you have to go below 90. And I think if everything is working in your favor and you don't have any weird injuries or like any weird issues, then I think an athlete should go below 90. I say that. No, I don't. When I say below 90, I'm not talking. Your butt's got to touch the floor.
Right.
It don't have to. Your butt don't have to touch the floor. Just slightly below parallel, and then come up. And the reason I say that is, it really is a harder lift when you go below parallel and have to come out of that position. Now, if you have if someone's got issues and bad back or I don't know, jacked up knee or something, then maybe, or bad hips or had a hip surgery, then maybe 90 is as far as someone can go. And if that's as far as someone can go, that's fine.
Yeah.
And parallel is good work. I mean, that's pretty low.
Yeah, parallel is still really good work. It's low. and it's good work. And another reason I say that is I've noticed that if I don't go parallel and I try and reverse out of a squat at a higher position, it puts more strain on my knees because it's like I'm reversing all this like tension. It's like I'm going down. Like I'm going down and I'm loading up my hips and I'm loading up my glutes.
Right.
And my back is tight and I'm loading up all my whole body to move this weight. But then in the middle of loading all this stuff up, I'm just saying, oh wait, stop, I'm going back up. And generally I have to take that downward motion and like very early on and reverse the whole process of going down and coming back up, and that generally is on your knees at that point because like my hips and butt aren't really going to do much if I'm coming up super high. And it's just like kinetic energy, like I'm just kind of going against the flow.
I do feel like that there's a certain window during the squat where you do put more pressure on your knees. Like you can feel it in your knees more, but once you get past that plane, you don't feel it anymore. So when you cut your squat high, you're never getting out of that window, like you said. So you're constantly feeling that pressure in your knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And then, like, also, like you said, you're pulling the e-brake and trying to reverse.
Yeah.
I get it.
Word. What do you think about, what should someone do to ensure that, when I'm lifting, when I'm squatting down, going down for the squat, that my back stays straight? What would you recommend for that?
I would recommend just a really tight core. The tighter your core is, the easier it is to keep that neutral spine position. And
also, if you build your upper back up and create more of a shelf for that bar to sit on, it doesn't feel as heavy on your back, if that makes sense. In your brain, make you not want to bend over because you're not feeling the pressure to bend over.
Yeah, I would say a developed back and a strong core is definitely going to help.
Also, strong hips, believe it or not, because if a lot of people think people bend over because their back is weak, when it is the exact opposite. The reason Andrew bent over so much is because he had a super strong lower back.
Yeah.
See, people have this misconception. Your body puts you in the position where you're the strongest, not where you're the weakest. So the reason a lot of people bend over is because their lower back is the strongest. So if you have really good developed hips and your hips are strong and your glutes are strong, you're probably more likely to stay upright in your squat.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, don't a lot of people use a weight belt to help and keep their core tight?
Oh yeah. If you have one and have the access to one, I would recommend it. It's something to push on, something for your core to push on and help create a tighter it's like it just reinforces the core and like makes your back a lot tighter and helps a ton.
And for anybody listening that wants to know more about belts, we've done a podcast on it in the past, so please go back and listen to it. You might can learn something.
Yeah, it's pretty nifty to have one.
What about the knee sleeves? I've seen you use them before, Andrew, when we were back at Freed.
Yeah, if people have the money to purchase knee sleeves, I would recommend it.
Or the bands.
The wraps.
Wraps. Sorry.
The wraps. Yeah. I would recommend the sleeves. I wouldn't necessarily recommend wraps unless you kind of know what you're doing
and plan on being competitive.
Yeah, or plan on competing. Then I wouldn't really buy wraps. I would just stick to maybe sleeves. The sleeves help a lot as far as taking some tension off your knees and just kind of keeping your knees really warm. And they do, depending on what types you buy, there are sleeves out there that can help with a little rebound out of the hole. Not a ton, but a little bit. So, I mean, if you have the money, I would recommend getting a pair so you can lift with less pain or just be a little safer. I would recommend a pair.
So I know we talked about the regular squats, but what about the front squats? I know I've done some of those. It's been about a year ago, a year and a half. What's some of the benefits of those? Like what kind of muscle groups does that work that regular squats doesn't?
So what a front squat really emphasizes, that this is why it's so difficult to do, is it emphasizes staying upright and not bending over in the squat. Because if you bend over, it's just going to roll out of your arms, and you're just going to lose the bar entirely. Another thing that front squats does is, like I was saying with the high bar, but the high bar works your quads a lot. Well, the front squat really works your quads. Like it truly. I did a ton of them at Free because they helped so much with everything, deadlifts and just anything. And it's because it helped me develop a good core, and it was a difficult lift. And like Timmy was saying, I would always good morning my squats. Well, you can't good morning front squat because the bar will just fall out of your hand. So it was something I did to work on my weaknesses and help correct some bad habits that I had developed over the years. So really, it'll help work your quads more, it'll help your core, and it'll help you be more upright.
How similar is the form of a front squat to a regular squat? I mean, I know obviously the bar's on your arms as opposed to your back. Yeah,
so the bar is on kind of your shoulder. What is it? What do they call it? Not the clavicle, but
well, yeah, it should be below your clavicle.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's resting on top of your pectorals.
Yeah, there we go. So, what was the question?
How's the form?
Oh, how's it different? Oh,
yeah.
So really,
it really isn't.
Besides the bar being on your arms or on your shoulders, it's really not. It's the same form. Your hips are going back. You're sitting back. You're breathing in to get a tight core. Really, the only thing that's different is your hand position and your elbow position. Mm-hmm. And that's really it.
What I try to focus on the most doing a front squat is having my elbows as high in the air as I can. Because as soon as your elbows start to drop, it means that the bar is going to start falling out.
Yeah.
Right.
I try to focus on, keeping them elbows up.
And that is one opposite, because when you're doing a low bar or high bar squat, we were talking about this, Kenneth, in the gym, is you were flaring your elbows out to kind of help the bar not to fall but when you pull your elbows in and try and pull that bar across your shoulders, it secures it better. And the more developed your upper back is, the easier it gets over time. Right. So yeah, really, as far as the actual form of the squat goes, it's not much different. It's still the exact same patterns and form that you would use for a high or low bar. Your knees will travel possibly. You'll have more knee travel, but it still shouldn't
be too far over my. Yeah.
No, really. Like mine still stay behind, behind or right at my toes.
Yep.
So.
Well, what about box squats?
I like box squats a lot because, one, it's a great way to teach people how to squat, and two, it really teaches that hip drive.
First thing we did when we got Andrew was put him on a box.
Yeah.
Which is the first thing we do with everybody. A box squat allows people who aren't used to squatting to learn how to sit back in their squat. Like what I spoke about earlier, is, a lot of people who don't have a clue how to squat will, just squat straight down, which, put your knees way out over your toes and all the pressure in your quads. So putting a box behind somebody allows somebody to sit back and, the box is there to catch them. Because at first, these people, your hips aren't strong enough to hold that position down in the hole. So it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but you can watch these novice lifters. They'll get to a certain point in their squat when they're trying to sit back, and their hips will literally just let loose because they're not strong enough, and they'll fall down onto the box. Now, of course, when we do box squats, it's not with heavy weight or anything.
Right.
It's more of a, technique, dynamic speed day kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I definitely suggest if you're new to squatting to build a box, right at parallel or a little bit below, and just practice sitting back onto that box.
Yeah, and generally speaking, your box squat stance is wider.
Yes, because you're
so-
trying to work those hips.
Yeah, because you're really trying to work the hips. So it's really not it's not a quad dominant squat by any means. It's truly you're trying to work your hips. I would do them a lot at Freed with the safety squat bar.
Yeah.
Because it made it really difficult. But you're really trying to sit back on that box, and then to get up, instead of using your quads, you're forced to use your hips and your glutes. And it also kind of teaches this one thing to where that other squat forms might not, is like if you're doing a box squat, you can kind of like dig in with your heels as you're getting up, and like you'll feel your hamstrings more.
Yeah, you'll feel them engage when you're trying to get off the box. Another thing people might do that try to box squat is some people use it kind of just a way to find where depth is. Like they'll squat down, and as soon as they touch the box, they'll come back up. What you need to do when you box squat is actually sit on the box. So once you get down in the hole and you feel the box under you, you're almost releasing your hip flexors, sitting on the box for a second, and then re-engaging and getting off the box. So don't just go down there and barely touch the box and come back up, because you're not getting the work that you need.
Right.
Because if you do that and you just tap the box and go up, you're not really having to use your hips a whole lot.
Right.
You kind of use that, crap. What do they call that when you build up pressure?
Stretch reflex.
Momentum.
Stretch reflex. That was what I was looking for.
Oh,
Yeah.
just kidding.
Real advanced people on the box squat, their shin will actually be slanted backwards instead of straight up and down or towards your toe.
Yeah.
I know I'm like that when I squat on a box. My
You're an
shin's
advanced
actually.
box squatter.
I've had a lot of practice on the box because I'm always starting over.
Yeah, I for you, Kenneth, I would actually recommend doing some.
Yeah.
You still got your box, Andrew?
I do.
Give it to Kenneth. You don't need it. I mean, you do, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually, at the gym I go to, they actually have some boxes that are pretty decent.
yeah, I'm cool if you want to lend it to Kenneth.
And then it's a nice little thing to work on. Because, it'd be nice if you could do a couple weeks with the box, and then a low bar, and then a high bar, then back to the box. Or
like we were doing, just depending on how many days you got. If you're squatting twice a week, one day on the box, one day off.
Yeah, that's true. Depending on how much time you have in the gym, it's just good to get a lot of variation. You don't want to do too much variation to the point where
You're not building anything.
yeah, you're not building anything, and you're just always changing, and you don't really ever have a baseline to go back to.
Right.
But it's nice to switch it up every now and then.
Right.
Well, any more questions, Kenneth?
Well, back to the high-low bar discussion. where is the? I know we talked about that. What was it? The high bar is generally the way to go. No. That's for the quads. The low bar is the way to go
Yeah.
for glutes, which is usually what you want to do. But the positioning of the bar with the low bar, is it like a little? It's a little bit below your shoulder blades, isn't it?
It's like resting on like your delts.
Yeah, there's some kind of like bone in your delt or like where your shoulder's at though, that if you have the bar resting across that bone, it's really painful. And it almost gives you like a dead arm, like your arm will fall asleep.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I guess it's a bone. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, Andrew?
No, it's a bone because when I've done it before, like when you press the bar on it, like your arms fall asleep.
Yeah, so you're trying to get below that bone.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I was telling Kenneth, for me, some people exaggerate it, but like the difference between
you can definitely go too low.
Yeah, like Kenneth was going way too low, and I was like, no, it got to be higher. Like, because the difference between a low bar and a high bar squat is in the traditional sense is really only, like for me, it's only like 3-inch difference. Like where the bar is.
Right.
It's not like I'm moving the bar a full foot. So it really is kind of like on your delts and kind of like behind the shoulder. It's
you're kind of placing it where you feel like you have the most muscle, I guess.
Yeah.
Where it feels the most secure. Yeah. It's really a feel thing. I don't know if the spot's exactly the same for everybody.
It's not. It's definitely not. Some people have it lower. Some people have it higher. I'm probably like a middleman. My low bar, like Kenneth was pretty surprised how high my low bar actually was, as compared to what he was trying to do. Kenneth has the bar resting on his like arm.
Yeah. If you get the bar too low, then that will also make you want to bend over way more. Yeah. Like we've had people at meets that I'll watch and I'll be like, that bar is way too low, because it's putting you in that good morning position because you're trying not to lose the bar off your back.
Right.
So,
what about the high bar placement?
It's kind of like on or slightly behind your traps.
Yeah. It's above that bone in your shoulder, whatever that is. We're very technical on this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much more time we got, but I've got just 2 more questions.
We can do both of them.
All right. So what about safety bars? What's the benefit of using those? Like, what does it help with?
Everything Andrew said about front squats, you can say safety bar, and it's exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah, it's the exact same thing, almost.
Safety bar, yoke bar. It's all the same thing.
The reason I would do them instead of front squats, well, I would still do front squats, but the reason I would do safety bar squats more is because, one, it's a little bit more comfy, and two, it actually, sometimes I think it's a kind of more challenging because it sits so high up on you. And like the front squats, like I was saying, if you pitch forward, you lose the bar. Well, if you pitch forward on a safety bar, you lose your head.
Yeah.
So, like for me, I thought it was a lot harder to stay upright with a safety bar than a front. Or at least I felt the pressure more, because I knew with a safety bar, it was my head that was going to be taken off.
Yeah.
But yeah, exact same thing. Everything I said about front squats applies to the safety bar.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said, because that bar is about 4 or 5 inches higher than what a high bar would be, because the pad is sitting on top of your shoulders instead of being, across your shoulders. So it definitely puts you in a position to force you to stay upright, or like Andrew said, you'll fall on your face.
Yeah, that would not be fun.
Nah.
So what about, last question, what kind of accessory work would you recommend to help with your squat lift? You know, I mean, obviously you probably want to work your glutes and your hamstrings, but you know, like what exercises, you know, what machines, what, you know, if that makes sense.
Well, this will apply for both the squat and the deadlift because it's a lot of the same muscle groups as far as your quads. I mean, not your quads, but as far as your hips and your glutes go and your hamstrings. I'll let Andrew talk about the glute ham raise, but the thing I want to talk about is pull throughs. When I was young and before you know, glute hams were even invented, I used to do a lot of pull throughs with bands. So a pull through is where, you know, you take like a sumo stance and you'll have a band laying between your legs. And usually the band will be, you know, hooked up to a bench or a piece of equipment that won't move. And all you do is you hold that band with your hands between your legs and you do a hip thrust. So I do like 4 sets of 8 pull throughs. So it's, all you're doing is a hip thrust, but it really builds up your hips and your hamstrings. If you don't have bands, you can also do this with a cable machine. But yeah, I suggest doing pull throughs for anybody that's trying to build up those hips.
Yeah, it helps a lot, and it's just like you're making love. Sweet love to those bands. And then the glute ham raise, like Tim was saying, you know, which not every gym has these, but glute ham raise is that machine. I'm trying to think if Reed ever had one. I don't remember. I think they have one now. Yeah, I think they have one now after I left. So
that renovation that they did.
Yeah, they keep adding some equipment. But yeah, it's this machine where all you do is you kind of, yeah, it's hard to explain, but like you just get on it with like your.
It's a back raise machine with a toe plate.
Yeah.
You want me to keep going, or?
Yeah, go for
it. So we've talked about this before on the podcast because it's one of the best things that you can have in your gym. It's definitely one of the top 5 pieces of equipment you need if you're opening a gym. But anyway, like I said, it's a back raise with a toe plate. So you push your feet against. The reason you need the toe plate is because the toe plate, when you're pushing against it with your feet, that is what's activating your glutes and your hamstrings. When you're just doing a back raise, there's nothing for you to push your foot against, so you're not activating that backside of your leg. With a glute ham raise, your knees are in the pad, like you're on the machine and you're facing. It's like you're laying on your stomach and you're looking down at the ground. But instead of bending at your hips and bending forward like you would with the back raise, you're actually not hinging your hips at all. What you're doing is that you're letting your leg straighten out, and it's your knee that's bending. So your back never moves when you're doing a glute ham raise. It's your leg that's moving.
Oh, you mean like the face down machine? You put your arms down, hold on to something to keep you stabilized, and you just basically lift your calves, you know, back, like you move them up.
Oh, that's a hamstring curl.
Oh, okay, so it's different.
Yeah.
I just have to Google a picture. I can do that later.
Yeah, y'all just Google a glute ham machine.
It's too hard to explain how it works.
It is. But anyways, you push your feet against the toe plate, you're bending your leg, and that activates your glute and your hamstrings. Leg curls are good. I like doing them single-legged because if you do them with both legs at the same time, a lot of the time you'll just favor whatever leg is stronger.
Oh, mine does that every time.
Yeah, so I like doing single-leg stuff as far as machine goes. Single leg, single arm.
I would say that, you know, a lot of people qualify the front squat as an accessory, so I think that's a super good accessory to help improve your squat, your competition or your back squat. Another one is, if your gym has it, I hear a lot of good things about those belt squat machines. I've never used one, but I've done a makeshift version where you stand on an elevated platform and like either hold a kettlebell or you have a chain wrapped around you with weights hanging down.
Yeah. Yeah, when you said weight belt earlier, that's what I was thinking of. One of those things with the chains.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of just works your quads a lot.
Yeah, those are cool. I'd like to try one day.
Yeah, I really wish my gym had one, but it don't. I would do them a lot.
I guess you could do leg extensions. We talked about leg curls.
Yeah.
I don't know. Really, the best thing to work your squat is just a squat.
Squat. Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah, man.
And another thing I would add is we talked a lot about, this is for like kind of a more just general thing, but talked a lot about bar position, high or low. But there are people out there that I've seen that have a higher-ish bar position, but still do a low bar style squat of sitting back and stuff. A lot of it does have to do with your proportions. And whatever bar position you can put the bar at to maximize your body and maximize your force output. Because technically, I don't know. Some people go like crazy low. I've seen some low bar squats, and it seems to work out for some people. I don't know how they stay upright at all.
I don't know.
But
I guess they have a lot of meat on their back.
Yeah, they do it somehow. But so it's kind of whatever bar position works. But there are generally the stereotypical low bar squat is going to allow you to lift more weight.
Yes, sir.
But another thing I would recommend to increase your squat would be to do some ab rollouts, which you might not really think that it would be the most beneficial, but if you got a weak core, then you ain't going to be able to squat a ton.
And some leg raises.
Yeah, leg raises. Really, let's be honest, almost anything helps your squat.
It's a full body movement, so everything.
But yeah, squat more, and
get you a big booty.
Big booty Judy, big booty Judy. That's all I gotta say about that. Man. I don't know.
Cricket.
No one likes big booty Judy.
I thought you were about to go into your rant, so I was going to let it be.
Oh, are we done? Hey, you know what's happening tonight?
What's that?
Square Enix's E3 presentation's happening tonight.
Oh man, remember how we watched E3 together last year for like 3 days?
Together this year.
We should.
Hey,
you know what else is happening tonight?
What?
Game 5 of the NBA Finals. I think Toronto is going to do it.
I hope Toronto does it.
Me too.
I'm tired of the Warriors.
Tell me about it.
Me too.
Hey, did y'all see the new Xbox?
No, I ain't seen anything. I didn't even know
looked at
E3 was going on.
They didn't really show anything there. But this was really funny. My personal opinion is that the people at Microsoft are really behind, and from what they revealed about their new console, I still think they're behind. But they were like, this one guy, so they have an SSD for their new console, which is, cool because, well, get with the times. But the guy was like, with the combination of solid-state drives and SSDs, and I'm just like, what? Those are the same thing. An SSD stands for solid-state drive. I was like, he's like, with the combination of solid-state drives and SSDs, and I was like, what is this? What are you talking about? What combination? They're the exact same thing.
With two.
And I was like, what is this guy talking about? But I'll be honest, they showed the Halo game.
Yeah.
I'm not. That series is done to me. And all they have is Gears of War, which should have been done That series is done with me. And they have Halo, which that series is done with me. And whatever they were like, we're going to be able to run games on SSDs and 120 frames per second. Well, congratulations, you just entered the modern era. Like it really was not very impressive. So I'm really hoping whatever Sony does this year, which they're not at E3 this year because they're smart and they realize that E3 is kind of becoming a meme. But
don't they always have their own conference anyway?
Yeah, they're doing their own thing. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to what Sony does, and I hope they continue to do a great job and destroy Microsoft.
Yeah. Microsoft
we need to
they just don't have any exclusive games.
They really. I will say this though, Microsoft I think has kind of realized that, and they're doing this thing where they're making all their games playable on PC. Like Halo Infinite will be playable, Gears of War playable on PC.
With cross-platforming?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Well.
So I think they're starting to realize that, and they're trying to shift over to the PC land with their games, which is probably a smart move. I do wonder what the future's going to bring. What's Sony going to do? Will there continue to be consoles, or is crossplay becoming so big to where everyone's just going to move to one universal platform? Everyone kept talking about streaming. Microsoft brought up streaming games instead of actually buying them and just paying for like a $5 monthly subscription.
Isn't that what PlayStation's already doing? So they're behind again.
Yeah, but I just see this. This was the coolest thing that happened at E3, and it wasn't even a Microsoft thing. The people at id Software created something called Orion, and it's a way to stream games faster and more smoother with this technology, and it's open so other people and other companies can use it. So I don't know. This Google Stadia thing might actually not be a blunder. But it still might be a blunder. I'm very skeptical about streaming games.
Yeah, me too.
I think that wraps this podcast up.
That's right.
Wrap it up.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's E3 tonight with Square Enix coming at you live from LA. Hopefully going to see some Kingdom Hearts 4 or at least some more Kingdom Hearts DLC. Maybe some of that pirate game. Who knows? Coming at E3. But ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing in life is not how much money you make, not the video games you own, and it's not the person that you think stole your money in first grade or stole your Yu-Gi-Oh cards and never got them back. The most important thing in life is the fact that you keep on keeping on in American society. Provide the cheeseburgers for people. Go to the gym and be nice to people. Be honest. The greatest people on this planet are people that are honest and not backstabbing fools out here trying to steal your credit score. No one wants my credit card. I don't make enough to get my credit card. I'm still poor. I got student loans, and I don't know if I'll ever pay them off, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you something about college, people. College is a ripoff unless you get a good degree. Don't come there for medieval studies, people. Go ahead and do something smart. I'm tired of this stuff everyone's going. Wait, what are you talking about, Becca? What? I got a wife in college. That was good. But ladies and gentlemen, have a great day, have a great night wherever you're listening to us from. Evening, night, dinner time, breakfast time, lunch time, brunch time. We'll see you on the next one.
We're out.
Peace.
Up next is the IBP Northeastern Carolina Raw Push-Pull in Norlana, North Carolina on June 22nd. We hope to see everyone there.
Please subscribe and thank you for listening. Be sure to follow @CheckMyTotal on Instagram for all the latest updates.